My children were sleeping in the next room while muffled moaning came from our bedroom. I hadn't even taken off my uniform yet, and she'd already taken her heart off me. The biggest blow didn't come from war, it came from home. I stood in the hallway of my own house, still wearing the dust of Helmand Province, listening to my wife with another man through the door I'd painted blue last summer because she said it would make our home feel more peaceful. Peaceful. The word tasted like copper pennies in my mouth, like blood from biting my tongue to keep from screaming. My hand reached for the doorknob, then stopped. Opening that door would end everything. 23 years of marriage, the life we'd built, the lies I'd been telling myself about her loyalty. But standing there listening was killing me just as surely, one muffled sound at a time. The smart move would be to walk away, come back tomorrow when the kids were at school, when I could think clearly. But Marines don't retreat. We don't leave our position when under fire. Even when the fire is coming from the woman who promised to love, honor, and cherish until death do us part. Death. Maybe this was a kind of death, the death of trust, of faith, of everything I'd believed while sleeping in sandbagged bunkers 8,000 miles away. If you came home to betrayal, would you confront it immediately or walk away? Subscribe and share your story in the comments. My name is Gunnery Sergeant Robert Chin, 45 years old, 24 years in the Corps, and until 3 minutes ago, I believed I was fighting for something worth protecting. A family. A marriage that had survived 6 deployments. A woman who sent care packages filled with homemade cookies and photos signed. Waiting for you, always. Always apparently meant. Until someone else comes along. I met Lisa at a Marine Corps birthday ball in Camp Pendleton. She was there with her roommate who was dating someone from my unit. One look at her in that black dress, laughing at some joke I couldn't hear over the band, and I forgot how to breathe. It took me 3 bourbons to work up the courage to ask her to dance. She said yes but warned me she had 2 left feet. She was lying. She danced like water, flowing and graceful, making me look good despite my clumsy combat boots trying to keep rhythm. "You're not much of a dancer," she'd whispered in my ear. "But you're honest about it. I like honest men." The irony of that statement would haunt me for years. We married 14 months later in a small ceremony on the beach. She wore her grandmother's dress, altered to fit her perfectly. I wore my dress blues, medals polished, shoes shined until you could see your reflection. My squad was there, forming an arch of swords for us to walk under. Her father, a Navy veteran himself, shook my hand and said, "Take care of her, Marine." I promised I would. Another promise that would turn to ash. The early years were golden, even with the deployments. Iraq in 2003, 2004, 2006. Afghanistan in 2008, 2010, 2012. Each goodbye got harder, but each homecoming was sweeter. She'd redecorate while I was gone, small changes to make the house feel new when I returned. New curtains here, a painted wall there. I'd joke that one day I'd come home to a completely different house. "Never," she'd say. "Just improvements. Making it better for when you're here." Now I wondered if the improvements included upgrading husbands. The first crack appeared 18 months ago, subtle as a sniper's breath. She joined a CrossFit gym, said she wanted to get healthy, to look good for my next return. I supported it, even bought her new workout clothes for Christmas. She'd leave at 5 a.m., return glowing with endorphin high and stories about the workout crew. "You'd like them," she said. "Several are veterans. They understand our lifestyle." Our lifestyle. Like deployment and loneliness were fashion choices we'd made together. Then came the changes in communication. Her letters, once pages long and full of daily details, became short paragraphs of generic updates. "The kids are fine. Work is busy. Weather's been nice." The kind of letters you write to a distant relative, not a husband facing Taliban fighters in Helmand. The video calls became less frequent. Technical problems, she'd claim. Internet issues. Time differences. Always an excuse wrapped in just enough truth to seem plausible. During my last call home, 3 weeks ago, something felt different. She was distracted, kept looking off screen, laughing at something I couldn't see. When I asked what was funny, She said the cat was playing with a toy. We don't have a cat. Haven't had one since Whiskers died 4 years ago. When I pointed this out, she quickly corrected herself. I meant the neighbor's cat, it's in our yard. The lie was so smooth, so quick, that I almost believed it. Almost. My platoon sergeant, Staff Sergeant Williams, noticed my distraction. Gunny, you've been staring at that photo for an hour. Everything good at home? The photo was from our anniversary last year. Lisa in a red sundress I'd bought her from a market in Kabul, standing in our backyard with that smile that used to light up my world. Now it looked forced, like she was performing happiness rather than feeling it. Everything's fine, Staff Sergeant. Just missing home. He nodded but didn't look convinced. Williams had been through a deployment divorce himself. He knew the signs, the distant look, the obsessive phone checking, the way a man holds his breath when mail call comes, hoping for a letter that never arrives. I started paying attention to details I'd ignored. Credit card statements showed charges at restaurants I didn't recognize, always for two. Movie tickets purchased when she told me she was working late. A hotel charge in our own city. For a work conference. She'd explained, though her office was 15 minutes from our house. Each explanation made sense individually, but together they painted a picture I didn't want to see. The gym became her obsession. 2 hours every morning, sometimes evening sessions too. New workout clothes every week, expensive brands we couldn't really afford on military pay. She'd send photos of herself in gym mirrors, flexing muscles I didn't know she had, wearing sports bras and tiny shorts that seemed designed more for attraction than athletics. Getting strong for you, she'd caption them. But her eyes in those photos were looking at someone behind the camera, and it wasn't me through the phone screen. Her social media told another story. Posts about finding yourself, about living your truth, about not settling for less than you deserve. Inspirational quotes about change and growth and new beginnings. Her friends, the ones I thought were our friends, commenting with hearts and fire emojis, encouraging her. Journey. What journey? Where was she going without me? Then I found the playlist. She'd forgotten to log out of Spotify on our shared iPad, and there it was. New beginning. Songs about desire, about forbidden love, about taking chances. Added 3 months ago, played daily according to the history. The same 3 months her letters had turned cold, her calls became infrequent, her I love yous sounded like obligations. My best friend since boot camp, Sergeant Major Thompson, called me 2 weeks ago. Rob, I don't know how to tell you this, but Maria saw Lisa at a restaurant downtown. With some guy. Holding hands. Maria was his wife, worked at the same hospital as Lisa. She said they looked intimate. I'm sorry, brother. I wanted to call immediately, to confront her, to demand answers. But we were heading out on a 3-day patrol, and I couldn't afford the distraction. So I carried the knowledge like shrapnel in my chest, feeling it tear deeper with every step through Afghan dust. Every night, lying in my sleeping bag under foreign stars, I wondered who was lying in my bed under familiar ones. The patrol ended yesterday. Transport opened up unexpectedly, a medical evacuation flight with empty seats. Want to catch a ride home early, Gunny? The logistics officer asked. Surprise the wife? Yeah, I said, already knowing what kind of surprise awaited me. The flight was 16 hours of torture. Every mile brought me closer to a truth I had been denying. The young Lance Corporal next to me kept talking about his girlfriend, showing photos, planning his proposal. I wanted to warn him, to tell him that promises were just words, that love was a battlefield where you could lose everything without firing a shot. But I just nodded and pretended to sleep. We landed at 2,200. By the time I processed through and got my truck, it was nearly midnight. The drive home took 37 minutes. I counted every one. The house looked the same from the outside. Lisa's car in the driveway, kids' bikes on the lawn, the American flag I'd installed still flying from the porch. Normal. Peaceful. A lie. But there was another car parked 2 houses down. A black BMW M3, the kind of car that costs more than I make in a year. The license plate frame read CrossFit Savage. I knew that car. It belonged to Derek Martinez, the gym owner Lisa couldn't stop talking about. Former Army Ranger, she'd said, like that somehow made it okay to spend every morning with him. I parked one street over and approached on foot, using shadows and silence like I'd been trained. Through the kitchen window, I could see 2 wine glasses on the counter, an empty bottle of Malbec, the expensive stuff she said we couldn't afford when I wanted to buy it for New Year's. The living room was dark, but candles flickered inside. Candles. She'd lit candles for him. That's when I heard it. The sound that stopped my world. My wife, in our bed, the bed where our children were conceived, where we'd spent countless Sunday mornings reading the paper and drinking coffee, where she'd cried in my arms before each deployment. That sacred space was now violated, contaminated, destroyed. My hand found my phone. I could call Thompson, have him talk me down. Call my brother, get his advice. Call a lawyer, start the process immediately. Instead, I stood frozen, a combat veteran paralyzed by the sounds of betrayal. Each moan was a bullet, each whispered word was a blade, each creak of the bed frame was a bomb detonating in my chest. The sounds stopped suddenly, replaced by whispers and rustling. They'd heard something, maybe my truck door, maybe my footsteps on the gravel. I stood perfectly still, watching shadows move past the bedroom window. Lisa's silhouette, unmistakable after all these years, then another, broader, taller, definitely male. I walked to the front door, my key sliding in silent as a knife between ribs. The house smelled different, cologne that wasn't mine, sweat that wasn't mine, betrayal that absolutely was mine to discover. Each step toward the stairs was deliberate, measured, giving them time to panic, to scramble, to realize their fantasy was about to meet reality. At the bottom of the stairs, I stopped and called out in the command voice that had led Marines through firefights. Lisa! I'm home! The silence that followed was deafening. Then scrambling, feet on hardwood, drawers slamming. Derek's voice, trying to sound calm but failing. Oh fuck, is that him? Him. Like I was just some abstract concept, not the man whose house he was in, whose wife he was with, whose life he was destroying. Like the photos of me in uniform covering these walls were just decoration. Like the folded flag from my grandfather's military funeral displayed in the living room meant nothing. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step announcing my approach like drums of war. At the top, I could see our bedroom door cracked open, light spilling out like blood from a wound. Through the gap, I saw Derek pulling on designer jeans, Lisa clutching a sheet to her chest, both of them looking like animals caught in headlights. I pushed the door fully open and stood there in my combat uniform, still dusty from patrol, still carrying the weight of serving my country while my wife served herself to another man. My unit patch was visible, my combat action ribbon caught the light, my wedding ring, still on my finger, gleamed like an accusation. Robert! Lisa gasped, the sheets slipping slightly, revealing skin that another man had just touched. You're early. You weren't supposed to. To what? To come home to my own house? To find my wife in bed with another man? What exactly wasn't I supposed to do? Derek stood there shirtless, his CrossFit carved abs on display, looking between us like he was calculating escape routes. Special forces training, my ass? He looked ready to run like a scared recruit. I should go, he mumbled, reaching for his shirt. Yeah, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. You should. You have 30 seconds before I decide to handle this the Marine Corps way. He ran, grabbing his shoes without putting them on, his keys jangling as he stumbled down the stairs. I heard the front door slam, his BMW roaring to life, tires squealing as he fled like the coward he was. Army Rangers, supposedly. More like Army stranger in my bed. Lisa sat there on our bed, our contaminated bed, trying to cover herself with the sheet while tears streamed down her face. Not tears of sorrow, I realized, but tears of being caught. There's a difference. How long? I asked. Robert, please let me explain. How long? 4 months, she whispered. 4 months. I'd been deployed for 6. Which meant she'd waited exactly 8 weeks before climbing into bed with another man. 8 weeks of me dodging IEDs and Taliban rockets while she was dodging her marriage vows. That night, standing in my bedroom, looking at the woman I'd loved for half my life, I understood something fundamental. I'd been fighting the wrong war in the wrong place. The real battle wasn't in Afghanistan. It was here, in my own home, and I'd already lost. That night, I knew my war had just begun. The comfort inn smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams, the kind of place where people went to hide from their lives or end them. I'd been there for 3 days, wearing the same clothes, eating vending machine food, and planning my counteroffensive like I was back in the Tactical Operations Center in Kandahar. The difference was, this time the enemy had already breached the perimeter. This time, the enemy had been inside all along. My phone showed 127 missed calls from Lisa, 84 text messages, and 23 voicemails I'd never listened to. I deleted them all without reading, without listening. Whatever story she'd crafted, whatever lies she'd wrapped in tears, I didn't want to hear them. Instead, I called the only person I trusted completely, my sister Catherine, a divorce attorney in San Diego who'd seen enough military marriages implode to know exactly what I needed to do. "Bobby? It's 3 a.m. here. What's wrong?" "I need your help, Kate." Professional help. The silence stretched across the miles. She knew. Somehow, she always knew when something was really wrong. "Lisa? Yeah. I'm so sorry." "How bad?" "Caught her with another man. In our bed. While the kids were asleep down the hall." "Jesus Christ." "Okay, listen carefully. Document everything. Don't confront her again until you have evidence. Don't move out of the house, that can be seen as abandonment. And whatever you do, don't do anything that could be used against you in court. I already left. I'm at a hotel. Go back. Today. It's your house too. Make her leave if someone has to go." But I couldn't go back. Not yet. First, I needed intelligence. In combat, you never engage without knowing your enemy's position, strength, and capabilities. This was no different. So I did what Marines do, I gathered intel. First stop, the bank. I needed to understand our finances before Lisa could hide anything. The manager, a former Navy guy named Peterson, recognized the look in my eyes immediately. "Deployment return?" he asked quietly. "Something like that." He printed 3 years of statements without asking questions, even gave me a private room to review them. That's where I discovered the depth of her betrayal. The CrossFit membership wasn't just expensive, it was $300 a month for Platinum membership, which included personal training. The credit card statements told a story of systematic deception, charges at Victoria's Secret when she told me she was grocery shopping, restaurant bills for 2 when she claimed to be working late, hotel charges in our own city during her supposed girls' nights. But the worst discovery was a pattern of ATM withdrawals, $500 here, $300 there, always in cash, always untraceable. Over 4 months, she'd taken out nearly $8,000 in cash. For what? What required that much untraceable money? Have you ever discovered the person you loved was living a completely double life? Subscribe to hear how deep this rabbit hole goes. I spent hours creating spreadsheets, documenting everything. Every suspicious charge got highlighted, cross-referenced with her texts and emails about where she'd supposedly been. The gym charges aligned with the days she'd been too tired for video calls. The restaurant charges matched with times she told me the kids were at sleepovers. The hotel charges. God, the hotel charges were all during times when I'd been on missions, unable to call. Next, I hired a private investigator, Marcus Sullivan, a former CID investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. We met at a truck stop outside of base, away from prying eyes. "I need everything," I told him. "How long it's been going on, who knew, where they went, what they did. Everything." Marcus studied me for a moment. "You sure you want to know everything? Sometimes the details make it worse." "I'm going to war, Marcus. I need all available intelligence." He nodded and slid a contract across the table. "Standard rates, but I give military discounts." Should have initial findings within 48 hours. While Marcus worked his angle, I worked mine. I drove past the CrossFit gym, noting the security cameras, the parking patterns, the schedule posted on the door. Derek's BMW was there every morning at 5 a.m., just like Lisa had been. I wondered how many of those morning workouts had actually been workouts. I created a fake Facebook profile and joined the gym's private group. The posts were enlightening. Photos from gym events showing Lisa and Derek standing too close, looking too comfortable. Comments from other members about what a cute couple they made. One photo from 2 months ago showed a group at a bar after some competition, Lisa sitting on Derek's lap, both of them laughing, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. The comments under that photo were revealing. "Get a room, you two! About time! You guys are perfect together!" Not a single person mentioned that Lisa was married, had 2 kids, had a husband serving overseas. Either they didn't know or didn't care. Then I found Derek's Instagram. Public profile, because of course it was. The man was a narcissist, posting shirtless selfies and motivational quotes about taking what you want from life and no regrets. But 3 months ago, the post changed. Suddenly there were quotes about finding unexpected love and when you know, you know. There were photos of romantic dinners where only his plate was visible, but I recognized the jewelry on the woman's hand across from him, the anniversary bracelet I'd given Lisa 5 years ago. One post made my blood boil, a photo of a sunrise with the caption, "Early morning workouts hit different when you're with someone special. Flexed biceps red heart hashtag CrossFit love hashtag power couple hashtag new chapter." Posted at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I checked my messages. That same morning, Lisa had texted me that she was exhausted from Emma's late-night homework session and would call me later. Marcus called 2 days later. "Can you meet? I have preliminary findings." We met at the same truck stop. He slid a manila folder across the table, thick with photos and documents. "It's worse than just Derek," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "Before Derek, there was someone else. A co-worker named Brian. Nothing physical that I can prove, but extensive emotional affair. Hundreds of texts, late-night calls, lunch dates. This was about 8 months ago, right when you deployed." I flipped through the evidence. Screenshots of text messages Marcus had somehow obtained. Lisa telling Brian she felt trapped, that she'd married too young, that she deserved passion. Brian responding that she was amazing, that her husband didn't appreciate her, that she should follow her heart. "It seems like Brian was the gateway drug," Marcus continued. "He gave her the emotional validation she was craving. When he wouldn't leave his wife for her, she found Derek. And Derek, well, Derek has a history." "What kind of history?" 3 other military wives in the past 2 years. All while their husbands were deployed. He targets them specifically, vulnerable, lonely, looking for attention. He love bombs them, makes them feel special, then moves on when the husband returns or things get complicated. Son of a bitch. There's more. Your wife has been telling people you have PTSD, that you're unstable, potentially violent. She's been laying groundwork for months, painting herself as the victim of an absent, emotionally damaged husband. I felt the rage building, the kind that made my vision narrow and my hands shake. But I pushed it down. Rage without purpose was just wasted energy. What about the cash withdrawals? Botox, lip fillers, a breast augmentation consultation. She's been planning a full makeover. There's also evidence of her looking at apartments, checking her credit score, researching divorce lawyers. She's been planning her exit strategy, while spending my combat pay on plastic surgery. I'm sorry, man. There's one more thing. Marcus pulled out another photo. It was Lisa's car parked at Derek's apartment complex at 2 a.m. on a night when she told me she was staying with her sick mother. Her mother lives in Oregon, I said flatly. I know. I checked. Her mother hasn't been to California in 6 months. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, documented. Lisa hadn't just cheated. She'd orchestrated a complete double life while I was fighting for our country. That afternoon, I finally went home. Lisa's car was gone, at work, presumably. I used my key and entered what used to be my sanctuary. The house felt different, contaminated. In our bedroom, I couldn't think of it as ours anymore. The sheets were new, the comforter was new, even the pillows were different. Like she was trying to erase what I'd seen. But she couldn't erase everything. In her closet, I found a box hidden behind winter coats. Inside, lingerie I'd never seen, with tags from 2 months ago. A Valentine's card from Derek. To my Crosset Queen, you make every WOD worth it. A hotel room key card. And at the bottom, prenatal vitamins. Prenatal vitamins. My hands shook as I held the bottle. The prescription was from 3 weeks ago. Was she pregnant? Whose was it? The room spun, and I had to sit on the floor of the closet, surrounded by clothes that smelled like another man's cologne. I photographed everything, then searched deeper. In her jewelry box, I found receipts for items I'd never seen her wear, expensive pieces, gifts from Derek probably. In her nightstand drawer, condoms. We hadn't used condoms in 15 years. In the bathroom, men's deodorant, men's razor, men's cologne, Creed Aventus, $400 a bottle. The same cologne I'd smelled that night. In my home office, which she'd apparently been using, I found printed emails between her and someone named Rachel, her divorce support group friend. The emails detailed everything: how to document emotional abuse that never happened, how to claim PTSD made me dangerous, how to get maximum alimony and child support. One email made me see red. The key is to make him look unstable. Military guys with PTSD are easy to paint as dangerous. Save any text where he sounds angry. Document any raised voices. Build your case slowly. I was being set up. She wasn't just cheating, she was preparing to destroy me in court. The kids came home from school at 3:30. They were surprised but happy to see me, not knowing their world was about to implode. Michael, 17 and looking more like me every day, bear hugged me so hard my ribs creaked. Emma, 15 and artistic like her mother, cried happy tears. Dad! Mom said you weren't coming home for another month. Plans changed, sweetheart. Where is Mom, by the way? Jim. They both said in unison, then Michael added with an eye roll. Where else? She's there all the time now, Emma said. She missed my art show last week because of some CrossFit competition. She's obsessed, Michael added. It's weird. And that Derek guy is creepy. You've met Derek? He came to dinner once, Emma said, making a face. Mom said he was just a friend, but he kept touching her arm and laughing at everything she said. It was gross. She'd brought him to dinner. With my children. In my house. Dad, you okay? Michael asked, noticing my clenched fists. Yeah, buddy. Just tired. Hey, why don't you guys go to Uncle Tom's for dinner tonight? I need to talk to Mom about some grown-up stuff. They exchanged glances. Teenagers aren't stupid. They knew something was wrong. Lisa came home at 6 p.m., gym bag over her shoulder, skin glowing with post-workout endorphins or post-Derek glow. I couldn't tell which. She froze when she saw me in the kitchen. Robert. You're home. My house too, remember? Or did you forget that along with your wedding vows? She set down her bag carefully, like it contained explosives. The kids are at Tom's. We're alone. We need to talk about the other night. No, we need to talk about Brian. Her face went white. How do you? And we need to talk about Derek's apartment at 2 a.m. And the prenatal vitamins. And the divorce lawyer emails. And the $8,000 in cash withdrawals. And the apartment hunting. And the lies about your mother being sick. Should I continue? She sat down hard, deflating like a punctured balloon. You hired someone to follow me? I hired someone to find the truth. Something you're apparently allergic to. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been planning to leave me for months, but you wanted to destroy me first. Make me look like the bad guy so you could take everything, The kids, the house, my pension. All while fucking your personal trainer. Don't be crude. Lisa, I heard you. Through our bedroom door. While our children slept down the hall. You want to talk about crude? She started crying, but these weren't tears of sorrow. These were tears of frustration, of being caught, of watching her carefully constructed plan crumble. You were never here, she exploded. 6 deployments in 10 years. I raised our kids alone. I went to every soccer game, every school play, every doctor's appointment alone. Do you know what it's like being married to a ghost? So you decided to get a boyfriend? Derek sees me. He talks to me about more than logistics and mission planning. He makes me feel alive. Derek has fucked 3 other military wives while their husbands were deployed. You're not special, Lisa. You're just his current target. That stopped her cold. You're lying. I pulled out Marcus's report, slapped it on the table. Photos of Derek with other women, testimonials from their divorced husbands, a clear pattern of predatory behavior. Sarah Mitchell, husband deployed to Iraq, 2019. Jennifer Hughes, husband in Afghanistan, 2020. Monica Torres, husband in Syria, 2021. And now you, 2023. He has a type, lonely military wives with deployed husbands and low self-esteem. She stared at the evidence, her worldview cracking. He said I was different. He said he never felt this way before. They all say that, Lisa. It's literally in the cheater's handbook. I want a divorce, she said quietly. Good. So do I. But here's how this is going to go. You're going to sign an uncontested divorce. Joint custody of the kids, though given the prenatal vitamins, I'm guessing that might get complicated. You get the Honda and your 401k. I get the house and my pension. You don't contest anything, and Derek's wife never has to know about you. Derek's not married. No, but his fiancée in Los Angeles doesn't know about his side projects. Jessica's her name. Sweet girl, elementary school teacher, planning a June wedding. Has no idea her man spends his deployments hunting military wives. Her face crumbled completely. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, showed her Jessica's Instagram. There was Derek, 2 weeks ago, at what looked like a wedding venue tour. Caption: Can't wait to marry my best friend. #JuneBride, #CrossFit couples who stay together. Lisa ran to the bathroom and threw up. I heard her sobbing between retches, the sound of complete devastation. Part of me wanted to comfort her. 23 years of marriage creates habits that die hard. But I stayed seated, looking at the ruins of our life together. When she came back, her face was blotchy, makeup ruined, looking older than her 42 years. The pregnancy test was negative, she said quietly. I'm not pregnant. Small mercies. Robert, I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. No, you're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. What do I tell the kids? The truth. That you made choices that destroyed our family. That consequences exist. That their father loved them enough to come home, even when home became a battlefield. She nodded, defeated. I'll sign whatever you want. Good. My lawyer will contact yours. In the meantime, you'll stop seeing Derek immediately. You'll stop the character assassination campaign against me. You'll be honest with the kids about why we're divorcing. And you'll get tested for STDs, because God knows where Derek's been. That's cruel. No, cruel is fucking another man in our bed while I'm getting shot at in Afghanistan. This is just consequences. I stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Lisa? I know about the Botox consultations and the breast augmentation quotes. You wanted to rebuild yourself for Derek. Congratulations, now you can rebuild yourself for yourself. Just not with my combat pay. That night, I stayed at Tom's house. His wife Maria held me while I finally broke down, sobbing like I hadn't since my first kill in Iraq. The pain was physical, like someone had reached into my chest and torn out something vital. She wasn't worth you, Maria whispered. She was never worth you. But she had been, once. Or at least I'd thought so. And that was maybe the worst part, not just losing my wife, but losing my ability to trust my own judgment. If I'd been so wrong about Lisa, what else was I wrong about? The war at home was different from the war overseas. Overseas, the enemy wore different uniforms, spoke different languages, made their intentions clear. At home, the enemy shared your bed, knew your vulnerabilities, used your love against you. I had fought enemies abroad. Now I was preparing for the enemy at home. 3 weeks later, the divorce papers were filed. Lisa signed everything without contest, her spirit broken by the revelation that Derek had been playing her like every other military wife before her. She tried calling him after our confrontation, but his number was disconnected. His CrossFit gym suddenly had a "for lease" sign in the window. Derek Martinez had vanished like smoke, leaving behind a trail of destroyed marriages and broken women. But the real war was just beginning. The kids took it harder than I'd expected. Michael, my 17-year-old who'd always been mature beyond his years, became angry and withdrawn. He'd mutter under his breath about cheating mothers, and slam doors when Lisa tried to talk to him. Emma, artistic and sensitive, blamed herself somehow, convinced that if she'd been a better daughter, Mom wouldn't have needed to find happiness elsewhere. "Dad?" she asked one night while we were painting her room, a project we'd started to keep busy. "Did Mom stop loving us too?" The question hit like shrapnel. "No, sweetheart. Mom made some very bad choices that had nothing to do with how much she loves you and Michael. Sometimes adults break their own hearts and everyone else's in the process. But she broke our family. Yes, she did. And I'm sorry for that. But you and your brother are the best parts of our family, and nothing can break that." Lisa moved into a small apartment across town. The kids stayed with me during the week and went to her place on weekends, at first. But as word spread about the affair, as Derek's pattern of targeting military wives became known around the base community, Lisa found herself increasingly isolated. The other military spouses who'd been her friends stopped inviting her to events. The school where she worked became uncomfortable when parents learned about her affair with a colleague who'd specifically targeted deployed soldiers' families. She'd destroyed more than our marriage. She'd destroyed her place in the community that had supported her for 15 years. The CrossFit gym story broke in the base newspaper when 2 other military wives came forward about Derek's pattern of predatory behavior. Sarah Mitchell, whose husband had served 3 tours in Iraq, had attempted suicide when Derek disappeared after her husband returned early from deployment. Jennifer Hughes had lost custody of her children when Derek convinced her to leave her Navy husband, then abandoned her when things got complicated. Lisa's name wasn't mentioned in the article, but everyone knew. In the tight-knit military community, secrets don't stay buried long. Would you rebuild after complete betrayal, or would you let it destroy you? Subscribe and share how you'd handle discovering everything you believed was a lie. The hardest part wasn't the divorce proceedings or the financial complications. It was rebuilding trust, not just in other people, but in myself. I'd been trained to assess threats, to read situations, to gather intelligence. Yet I'd missed the signs of my own wife's deception for months. How do you trust your judgment again when it failed you so completely in the most important area of your life? Colonel Peterson, my commanding officer, called me into his office 6 weeks after I'd returned from deployment. "Shen, how are you holding up?" "Fine, sir. Ready for duty." "Cut the shit, Gunny. I've seen your incident reports from Afghanistan. You performed flawlessly under fire for 6 months. But your psychological evaluation shows someone carrying more weight than combat trauma. Talk to me." So I did. For the first time since discovering Lisa's betrayal, I talked honestly about the anger, the self-doubt, the way it felt to realize that while I'd been dodging bullets overseas, my wife had been dodging our marriage vows at home. "You know what the hardest part is, sir? In combat, when someone shoots at you, you know where you stand. When someone you love betrays you, you question everything, every memory, every conversation, every moment you thought was real." Peterson nodded. "My first wife cheated while I was in Vietnam. Came home to find she cleaned out our bank account and moved in with my neighbor. Know what I learned?" "What's that, sir?" "Some people are broken in ways you can't fix, And their brokenness has nothing to do with you. Your wife didn't cheat because you were a bad husband. She cheated because she's selfish and weak. Don't let her weakness make you doubt your strength. The colonel recommended therapy, and for the first time in my career, I took advantage of military counseling services. Dr. Sarah Washington was a former military spouse herself, divorced after her husband's gambling addiction destroyed their finances and trust. Betrayal trauma is real, she told me during our first session. When someone you love systematically deceives you, it creates the same psychological impact as combat trauma: hypervigilance, difficulty trusting, emotional numbing. The difference is, society recognizes combat trauma. Betrayal trauma gets dismissed as a personal problem. Through therapy, I learned that what I was experiencing had a name: post-infidelity stress disorder. The constant checking of phones and social media, the inability to sleep, the intrusive thoughts about Lisa and Derek together, these weren't character flaws. They were normal responses to psychological warfare conducted by someone who had access to my most vulnerable spaces. The goal isn't to forget or forgive, Dr. Washington explained. The goal is to process the trauma so it doesn't control your future relationships or your relationship with yourself. I threw myself into work and the kids. Michael was struggling with his senior year, his grades slipping as he dealt with the family chaos. I started helping him with college applications, something Lisa had always handled before. Turns out, my son had inherited my analytical mind and wanted to study cybersecurity. To protect people from predators, Dad. Online ones and real-life ones. Emma discovered that art could be therapy. Her paintings became darker, more complex, dealing with themes of trust and betrayal and resilience. Her art teacher recommended her for a summer program for gifted students. She's processing something deep, the teacher told me. The work is painful but powerful. Meanwhile, Lisa's new life was falling apart. Without Derek's attention and promises, she seemed to realize what she'd traded away. She called constantly, wanting to talk, wanting to work things out, claiming she'd made a terrible mistake. I was confused, she said during one late-night call that I should have ignored. Derek made me feel like someone I wasn't. I lost myself. No, Lisa. You found yourself. You found out you're the kind of person who destroys her family for temporary excitement. Own it. That's not who I am, it's exactly who you are. Your choices define you, not your intentions. The divorce was finalized 4 months after I'd caught them together. I kept the house, my pension, and primary custody of the kids. Lisa got her car, her 401k, and weekends with children who increasingly chose to stay with me instead of visiting her cramped apartment where she cried constantly about her mistakes. Derek's story eventually came out through the Military Wives Network. He was from Los Angeles, had never been in the military, had specifically moved to military towns to target deployed soldiers' wives. He'd present himself as a successful businessman, a former Special Forces operator, whatever would appeal to his current mark. The CrossFit gym was rented month to month under a false name. When things got complicated, when husbands returned early or women got too attached, he'd simply disappear and set up shop in a new town. Lisa had been victim and perpetrator both, victimized by Derek's manipulation, but she'd victimized our family with her choices. Understanding the psychology didn't excuse the actions. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Lisa at the grocery store. She looked thin, tired, older than her 43 years. Her hair had grown out from the expensive cut she'd gotten for Derek, and she wore no makeup, no jewelry, just jeans and a faded t-shirt. Robert, the kids won't return my calls. They're processing their own trauma, Lisa. Give them space. I want to come home. I want to fix this. There's nothing to fix. You burned down our marriage and salted the earth. Move on. Derek was exactly what you chose over our family. Don't make him the villain in a story where you played that role yourself. She started crying in the cereal aisle, but I kept walking. I'd learned in therapy that her tears weren't my responsibility anymore. She'd made choices that led to consequences, and those consequences weren't mine to fix. A year later, I started dating again. Dr. Washington had warned me it would be difficult, that betrayal trauma makes it hard to trust new people. She was right. Every woman who seemed too interested, too quickly, triggered my hypervigilance. Every unexplained text or late meeting became suspicious. But then I met Catherine, a nurse at the base hospital who'd been divorced herself, not from infidelity, but from an abusive marriage she'd finally found the courage to leave. She understood trauma, understood healing, understood that trust had to be rebuilt brick by brick. "I'm probably going to be suspicious and jealous and damaged for a while," I told her on our third date. "I'm probably going to flinch when you raise your voice or move too quickly," she replied. "We're both carrying damage. The question is whether we want to heal together or separately." We chose together. The kids loved Catherine from the beginning. She didn't try to replace their mother or fix their family trauma. She simply offered stability, kindness, and the model of what a healthy relationship looked like. Michael, now in college studying cybersecurity, told me Catherine was the first adult who never lied to us about anything. Emma, now 16 and still processing through art, painted a portrait of our new family, me, Catherine, Michael, and herself, standing strong together. But in the background, barely visible, she'd painted the shadow of a broken figure walking away. When I asked about it, she said, "Some people choose to be part of the light, Dad. Others choose to stay in the shadows they created." Lisa remarried 2 years later to a man she'd met in the divorce support group Dr. Washington had recommended. He was kind but weak, exactly the type who'd overlook her history for the chance to be with someone he thought was out of his league. The kids attended the wedding out of obligation but came home early. "She kept looking at you during the ceremony," Michael told me later. "Like she was thinking about what she threw away." "That's not our problem anymore," I replied. "She made her choices. We made ours." 3 years after that night in the hallway, I finally felt like I could breathe again. The hypervigilance had faded, replaced by earned wisdom about red flags and boundaries. The anger had transformed into something harder but more useful, the knowledge that I deserved better than deception and betrayal. Catherine and I married in a small ceremony on the base, surrounded by real friends who'd supported us through the healing process. Michael walked Emma down the aisle as my bridesmaid. She'd insisted that her real family should be part of the ceremony. Lisa sent a card congratulating us. I threw it away without opening it. During my retirement ceremony last month, 26 years of service, 3 wars, countless deployments, Colonel Peterson presented me with the Legion of Merit. In his speech, he talked about my service record, my leadership, my dedication to the Corps and country. But afterward, privately, he said something that meant more. "You know what I'm most proud of, Chen? You didn't let betrayal make you bitter. You didn't let someone else's weakness become yours. That takes a different kind of courage than what we show in combat." He was right. It had taken a different kind of courage, the courage to trust again, to love again, to believe that not everyone would use my vulnerabilities against me. The courage to rebuild rather than retreat, to choose healing over hardness. Emma's latest painting hangs in our living room, a phoenix rising from ashes, wings spread wide, soaring toward light. At the bottom, in her careful script, she'd written, "Dad taught me that when someone burns down your world, you don't have to stay in the ashes. You can choose to fly." Lisa had chosen ashes. She'd chosen temporary excitement over lasting love, selfish pleasure over family commitment, lies over truth. She'd chosen to burn down everything good in her life for a man who never intended to stay. I'd chosen to rise. Some nights, lying next to Catherine in our peaceful bedroom, listening to her steady breathing, I think about that moment in the hallway 3 years ago. The moment when I'd stood in my uniform, dusty from serving my country, listening to my wife betray our marriage in the next room. That man had believed in fairy tales, in happily ever after, in the power of love to conquer all obstacles. That man had been naive, trusting, willing to give his heart completely to someone who didn't deserve it. That man died that night, and I buried him with honor. The man I became is harder, wiser, more careful with trust but not cynical. He knows that love exists but requires 2 people willing to fight for it. He knows that marriage is a choice made daily, not a promise made once. He knows that actions define character, not words or tears or regrets. He knows that the worst betrayal can become the foundation for the best rebuilding. Wars end in victory or defeat, but life after betrayal isn't that simple. It's about choosing who you become after someone else's choices destroy who you used to be. It's about deciding whether their brokenness will break you or make you stronger. Lisa chose to stay broken. I chose to heal. That made all the difference.